Silence is one of the most powerful tools you have, yet most people underestimate its impact. When you stop texting someone, when you completely remove yourself from their world, you create a shift. You break the pattern they've grown used to. They expect you to reach out, to check in, to send that one last message, hoping for a different outcome. But when you don't, when you stay silent, they're left with nothing but their own thoughts. And that is where the real power lies. People take attention for granted when it's given freely. They assume it will always be there, that no matter what they do, you'll always be around. This is why cutting off communication is so effective. It disrupts their sense of control. The moment they realize you've stopped trying, that you're no longer chasing, something shifts in their mind. At first, they may not even notice. They might assume you'll eventually cave in and text them again. But as time passes and the silence lingers, the doubt starts creeping in. They begin to wonder why you suddenly stopped. Did you move on? Did you find someone else? Are you happier without them? These thoughts eat away at them because deep down, people crave validation. They want to feel wanted, needed, missed. But when you remove yourself from the equation, they no longer have that reassurance. Your silence forces them to face the possibility that they were never as important as they thought. And nothing is more unsettling than realizing someone who once cared no longer does. This is why silence is not weakness, it's strength. It takes discipline to resist the urge to reach out. It takes confidence to walk away and trust that your absence will speak louder than any message ever could. Most people fail at this because they let their emotions control them. They tell themselves they need closure, they need an explanation, they need to make the other person understand how they feel. But the truth is, the only explanation they need is your silence. When you stop texting them, you regain control. You're no longer reacting, no longer seeking validation, no longer putting someone else's opinion of you above your own self-worth. You shift the dynamic from being someone who needs to be heard to someone who doesn't need to say anything at all. And that silence is powerful because it shows that you are no longer emotionally invested in them. At first, they may try to convince themselves that they don't care. They might ignore the change, act like it doesn't bother them. But as time passes, the reality begins to sink in. They start replaying past conversations, questioning where things went wrong, wondering why you're no longer engaging. And the moment they realize they've lost your attention, they start craving it more than ever. This is why walking away without a word is the strongest move you can make. It removes their ability to control the narrative. It forces them to reflect on their actions, to sit with the consequences of how they treated you. It makes them feel the absence in a way that words never could. And when they finally realize what they lost, it's already too late. Emotional control is what separates the strong from the weak. In every aspect of life, the person who can control their emotions holds the advantage. When you let your feelings dictate your actions, you give away your power. And nowhere is this more obvious than in the way people handle silence. The weak give in to the urge to reach out, to seek validation, to look for some kind of response. The strong, however, understand that restraint is where true power lies. When you resist the impulse to text them, you are not just ignoring them. You are proving to yourself that you are in control. Most people don't realize how much they rely on external validation until they stop getting it. They become desperate for some kind of reaction, thinking that a response will give them the closure they crave. But the truth is, closure doesn't come from another person. It comes from discipline. It comes from deciding that you are not going to let someone else dictate your emotional state. The moment you decide that you will not be the one to break, everything changes. Instead of feeling weak for not texting them, you feel powerful for holding back. Instead of needing to hear from them, you realize that your silence is already sending the strongest message possible. The person who masters their emotions always wins, because they are no longer playing a game, they are in full control of themselves. Think about it. Why do most people text again after being ignored? It's not because they truly need an answer. It's because they hate feeling powerless. They hate the idea that someone else has the upper hand, so they send another message hoping to get some kind of reaction, hoping to prove that they still have an influence. But all they're really doing is revealing their own insecurity. The strongest individuals don't need to play that game. They don't need to chase, beg, or seek closure. They understand that walking away is the ultimate power move. Not because they're trying to manipulate, not because they're trying to get revenge, but because they refuse to give someone else the satisfaction of knowing they still have control. And here's the real truth: people respect those who don't fold under pressure. When you stop texting them, when you refuse to give them the reaction they expect, you instantly become more valuable in their eyes, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're showing that you don't rely on their attention to feel important. That kind of confidence is rare, and it's something that people notice. Over time, they will start to wonder why you didn't reach out, why you didn't try harder, why you didn't do what they expected. And that's when the dynamic shifts. Instead of you being the one seeking their validation, they begin to question whether they ever had as much control as they thought. They start to realize that maybe, just maybe, they lost someone who had the strength to walk away. And that realization will haunt them far more than any text ever could. People take attention for granted until it's gone. As long as you keep reaching out, checking in, or keeping the conversation alive, they assume your presence is guaranteed. They assume they hold the power, that no matter what happens, you'll always be there. But the moment you stop texting, the moment you disappear without a word, something shifts. Suddenly, they notice the silence. They start to wonder why you're no longer engaging, and that's when reality begins to sink in. At first, they may brush it off. They may assume you're just playing a game, trying to get a reaction. But as time passes and you remain silent, doubt starts creeping in. They start asking themselves questions they never considered before. Did I lose them? Did they move on? Are they really done with me? These thoughts eat away at them because deep down, people hate feeling ignored. They hate knowing they don't have the same effect on you anymore. The truth is, people notice when you stop caring. They might not have valued your presence when you were constantly available, but the moment you step back, they begin to feel your absence. It's human nature. We want what we can't have. The less available you are, the more valuable you seem. And when you make it clear that you're no longer investing your time or energy into them, it forces them to reassess everything. This is why disappearing is more powerful than any words you could say. If you try to explain yourself, if you send a long message telling them why you're done, it gives them an opportunity to justify their actions, to twist the situation, to make excuses. But silence? Silence leaves them with nothing but their own thoughts. And thoughts are dangerous when regret starts to set in. They'll replay the last conversation, searching for clues. They'll wonder if they pushed you too far. They'll check their phone expecting a message that never comes, and that frustration will build because now they no longer have control. They no longer get to decide when or if you speak to them again. That decision is yours, and the fact that you've chosen silence speaks louder than anything else ever could. Most people act like they don't care until they realize you actually don't. They assume they can get away with disrespect, with half effort, with taking you for granted. But when they finally see that you've truly let go, that you're not playing games, that you've genuinely moved on, that's when they feel the loss. That's when they regret ever thinking you would always be there. And here's the best part: you won't even have to say a word. Your silence is already delivering the message loud and clear. Moving forward is the ultimate revenge. Nothing unsettles people more than realizing they no longer have a hold over you. When you stop texting them, when you no longer seek their validation, and when your life starts improving without them, that's when they truly feel the loss. Not when you argue, not when you beg for closure, not when you try to prove your worth to them, but when you walk away completely and start thriving. Most people waste too much time trying to make someone realize their value. They send long texts, they ask for explanations, they try to remind the other person of the good times. But all of this only reinforces one thing: that you are still emotionally invested. And as long as they see that you care, they feel secure. They know they still have power over you. Even if they don't respond, even if they ignore you, they take comfort in knowing you're still there, still waiting, still hoping for their attention. But the moment you decide to move forward, the moment you stop caring, everything changes. Suddenly, they are no longer the center of your world. They are no longer the person who dictates your emotions. And that realization hits harder than any message ever could, because People don't regret losing someone when that person is still begging for attention. They regret it when that person completely disappears and never looks back. Think about this. The more time you waste thinking about them, the more power you give them. Every moment spent checking your phone, every time you wonder if they'll reach out, every time you replay old conversations in your mind, you're keeping yourself stuck. And the only way to truly move on is to shift your focus, not on them, not on what they're thinking, but on yourself. This is where most people fail. They think ignoring someone is enough. They think that simply not texting will make them feel empowered. But true power doesn't come from just cutting contact. It comes from using that time and energy to become better, stronger, and completely independent. Because the goal isn't just to make them wonder where you went. The goal is to build a life so fulfilling that their absence doesn't even matter anymore. When you focus on self-improvement, on leveling up mentally, physically, and emotionally, you change in ways they never expected. They thought you'd be stuck, waiting, hoping for another chance. But instead, they see you thriving, they hear about your success, they notice the changes. And that's when the regret sets in, because now they can't reach you the way they used to. Now, they don't have access to the person they once knew. And here's the irony. When you genuinely move forward, that's when they start looking back. They start feeling the void that your presence once filled. They start wondering if they made a mistake. And by the time they realize your value, it's too late because you're already gone. That's why the best response is no response. The best revenge is success. And the strongest move you can make is to build a life so good that their absence becomes irrelevant. The biggest mistake people make after cutting contact is waiting. They tell themselves they're moving on. They say they're focusing on themselves, but deep down, they're still hoping for a message, still checking their phone, still wondering when the other person will notice their absence. This is where most people fail because they're not truly letting go. They're just pretending to. Real power comes when you stop waiting altogether, when you no longer care whether they notice, whether they regret, whether they ever reach out again. That's when you finally win. Because as long as you're waiting, they still have control. Even in their absence, they're still occupying space in your mind. And that's exactly what keeps you stuck. When you decide that you're done, not just on the surface, but deep down, that's when everything shifts. Because it's not just about cutting contact, it's about shifting your entire mindset. You're not just ignoring them to get a reaction. You're not just stepping back to make them miss you. You're doing it because you truly understand your worth. You're doing it because you know that wasting energy on someone who doesn't value you is the definition of weakness. And here's the truth. People can sense when you're still emotionally attached. They can tell when you're waiting, even if you don't say it outright. They can feel it in your energy. But when you genuinely stop caring, when you genuinely move forward, that's when they start feeling the impact of your absence. Not when you play games, not when you try to make them jealous, but when you truly, fully walk away. Think about it. If someone doesn't respect your time, your effort, or your presence, why should you waste another second thinking about them? The people who take you for granted never expect you to actually leave. They assume you'll always be there, ready to respond, ready to give them another chance. And when you prove them wrong, when you make it clear that you're not an option anymore, that's when they realize what they've lost. But by then, it won't matter because you won't be waiting. You won't be checking your phone. You won't be wondering what they're thinking. You'll be too busy leveling up, too focused on your own growth to even care whether they ever reach out again. That's when you become untouchable. That's when you win. Silence is the most powerful response you can give. When you stop texting, when you stop chasing, when you remove yourself completely, you send a message stronger than words ever could. Because words can be argued with. Words can be dismissed, twisted, or ignored. But silence forces people to sit with their own thoughts, their own regrets, their own mistakes. And that's where real impact happens. At first, they won't notice. They'll assume you're just being dramatic, that you'll eventually reach out like you always do. They won't take your absence seriously. They'll go about their life as if nothing has changed. But time is what makes silence powerful. As days go by, as weeks pass, and as they realize you truly aren't coming back, doubt starts to creep in. They start to wonder if they underestimated you, if they miscalculated your worth, if they pushed too far and lost something they thought would always be there. This is how the dynamic shifts. As long as you're available, as long as you're reaching out, they hold the power. But the moment you stop, the moment you disappear, that's when they start feeling the loss. Because people don't miss you when you're still an option. They miss you when they realize they no longer have access to you. And the key is to make sure they never do again. Because the biggest mistake you can make is breaking your own silence. The moment you reach out, the moment you check in, the moment you give them a glimpse of the old you, the cycle starts all over again. They get that reassurance. They get to feel in control again. And suddenly, your absence loses all its power. That's why true strength isn't just about cutting contact. It's about staying gone. It's about making the decision that no matter what they do, no matter what they say, you are done. Because that's when you truly take your power back. That's when they realize they never had control over you to begin with. You just let them think they did. And once they see that you're truly gone, once they feel that emptiness where your presence used to be, that's when regret hits the hardest. That's when they start replaying every interaction, wondering where they went wrong. That's when they start craving your attention, not because they care, but because they no longer have the comfort of knowing you're there. But by then, it won't matter, because you will have moved on. You will have used your silence not as a weapon, but as a tool for growth. And by the time they realize what they lost, they won't even have the chance to fix it, because you'll be too far ahead for them to ever catch up.